Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Andy Osheroff, and I'm the manager of operations for USM's Career and Employment Hub. And then we're here with another career talk, and we're very excited this afternoon to have folks from the FBI join us. And so without further ado, I will pass it over to them to introduce themselves and talk about some of the opportunities available at the FBI.
Hello, my name is Serena Coughlin. I'm a special agent with the FBI, and I am out of the Philadelphia field office. I'm the recruiter and applicant coordinator for the southeastern portion of Pennsylvania. And in a minute, I'll tell you a little bit about my background and how I came into the FBI. But first, I'm going to let my counterpart introduce himself.
Thank you. Thank you, Serena. It's great to be here today with the University of Southern Maine. My name is Tommy McDonald. I've been an FBI agent for over 20 years, 8.5 of which I spent right near the campus of Southern Maine in the Portland office out of our Boston division. And I too will go over my background with the FBI after Serena. But I am currently the recruiter for the Boston office of the FBI. We cover 4 states in Boston: Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New Hampshire, and Maine, and I am the recruiter and always willing to talk to young people about a potential career in the FBI.
Yeah, Tommy's territory is enormous. Our Boston field office is responsible for a huge geographic area. And the reason that I'm involved in speaking to you today out of the Philadelphia field office is I had an opportunity to participate in an event with I just found out yesterday it's called EACE as opposed to EACE, the Eastern Association of Colleges and Employers. And that's something that I would highly encourage all of you to look into participating in. You can probably find out more information through your career development department, but it has been an excellent opportunity to reach out to students from all over, not just from my territory. So I've been in the FBI since March of 2001. Prior to the Bureau, I was director of operations for a nonprofit company. So one of the things that I am always dealing with as a recruiter is all of the myths and misconceptions that people have about who comes into the FBI as a special agent, what a special agent is supposed to look like, act like, and what kind of a career they would have had prior to the Bureau. So as you just heard, I did not have a law enforcement background. I did not come into the FBI from the military, which is one of the things that I'm constantly having to talk to people about, because so many folks think that the only way to come into the FBI is through one of those pathways. And while those are an excellent way to come into the Bureau as a special agent, they are by no means the only ways to come in. So I am also married to an agent. And I usually bring that up because one of the other myths that people have is you cannot have a successful family life and be a special agent. And we have 3 young sons. So I always warn people when I'm doing a Zoom session, I am not allowed to do Zoom from the office, which means I'm in my home. And there's a very real possibility you're going to hear either a child or a dog. So one of the things that we look for in a really good agent applicant is to be flexible and adaptable. So I appreciate it if you are that for me over the next few minutes. So like I said, I started in the FBI shortly before 9/11. I started working crimes against children. I was part of an initiative called the Innocent Images Program, which at the time that I came in was the FBI's big new program, and it related to child pornography. And 6 months later, 9/11 happened, and I was, as so many of us were, drafted to work counterterrorism. And I began working that in 2003 in the LA field office. I worked Sunni extremism and Al-Qaeda matters there. And then in 2006, transferred to the Baltimore field office. That was because the person I mentioned a few minutes ago is from Philadelphia. And just like Boston, if you are from Philly, Boston, or Chicago, apparently there is nowhere else on the planet that you want to live. So as soon as we could move back to the East Coast, we did. And I transferred into the Baltimore field office, worked counterterrorism there for about 5 years, and then transferred into the Philadelphia field office in 2010, where I was assigned to a cyber squad. And about it's been about exactly 2 years. About 2 years ago, I was asked to become the recruiter for Philadelphia, and then about a year later, the applicant coordinator. What that means is I'm the person that goes out and tries to find the good fish, catch the fish, skin them up and put them on the table ready for the FBI to feast upon. So all the way from the beginning of finding great candidates all the way through. So I'm going to let Tommy talk a little bit about his background and how he came in, and then we can discuss the FBI employment in general, the special agent role in particular, since that is the one that most people are familiar with, and some good resources for you so that you can get additional information aside from this Zoom session. So Tommy, I'm going to hand it off to you.
Well, thank you, Serena. Yeah, I had always had an interest in being an FBI agent, even when I was in my junior high and high school years. It's a career I always had in the front of my mind. I had put myself through college and then got a job after college in the private sector, working for a company doing sales, and really always wanted to, never lost sight of the desire to be an FBI agent. I went back to law school at night. I got my law degree in 3.5 years going at night while working full time. And at age 29, I became a new agent trainee down at Quantico. I graduated from Quantico and reported to New York City as a first office agent about a year before the September 11th attacks. I was fortunate enough to land on the Violent Crime Squad in New York City. I was actually a squad mate of Len Hatton, who was the only agent the FBI lost on 9/11 in the Twin Towers. I worked on that squad for about 9.5 years. Our main violation was armed bank robberies, but we did everything from armored car robberies to violent fugitives to kidnappings to crimes on cruise ships. We covered the 5 boroughs of New York City. I then was asked in late 2009 to come up to Boston and look for a senior citizen fugitive. Many of you in New England have probably heard of James Whitey Bulger. I spent a year here in Boston working on the Bulger investigation, and then I was sent back to New York for a year, where I worked a violent RICO case in Yonkers, New York. And then in the latter part of 2011, I was offered a voluntary transfer to Portland, Maine. And I spent 8.5 years there working on Middle Street in the old port of Portland, really covering most of the southern part of the state of Maine as kind of a garden variety general criminal investigator. I worked mostly with the small town police departments that we have so many of them here in Maine. Recently, after I hit my 20-year mark, I decided it would be a nice final view of the FBI to be the recruiter, and I now work down in Boston. And before we get off today, I'll certainly leave the point of contact for the Boston FBI office. If you guys watch this webinar and decide you have interest in pursuing a career with the FBI, you can certainly reach out from me at our office, and I can hopefully guide you through the process that Serena and I are going to talk about here today.
I don't know if you noticed me smiling when you mentioned Whitey Bulger. Apparently he was living about 2 blocks away from where I was when I was in the LA field office. And my husband and I joke all the time. We were really close to this shopping center called 3rd Street Promenade that we probably had walked by him 100 times because apparently he hung out there a lot. So yeah, really, really good investigators there. Just like Tommy, I had wanted to be an FBI agent since I was 9 years old. That is by no means uncommon within our ranks. If you were to take a poll of most special agents, they would probably tell you the same thing. That being said, it is one of those jobs, like being an astronaut or being center field for the Dodgers, that lots of kids say, oh, I really want to be an FBI agent when I grow up. But unlike those other jobs, there's actually a very good opportunity that if you truly want to pursue this position, it is quite attainable. There are a very small number of agents. There are only 13,000 special agents in the FBI. Most people think that we are a much larger group than we actually are. That's based on popular media because we're in every movie and TV show, it seems like, and also the responsibility and authority that we have. So it's actually a very small, very selective group. The first resource that I want to provide you, as Tommy mentioned, he's going to give you his contact information. I will provide you my email address as well. But the best resource for you is fbijobs.gov. At that website, you will get an overview of the many different career paths that the FBI has, because most people know about the special agent role thanks to popular media, but there are more than 800 different jobs and titles in the FBI. And the special agent role is our only law enforcement investigative position. So we do have an FBI police position, which provides security and facility security for 3 of our locations. But I usually don't bring that up because it confuses people when they hear FBI police. So there are 2 main pathways to coming into the Bureau. There's special agent and there's everybody else. And everybody else is where you find those 800 other positions that we refer to as professional support. So in support of the investigative mission of the FBI. A lot of people also don't realize that the Bureau isn't the top law enforcement agency in the country, meaning that somehow we oversee other police departments, or that we're just like a very large police department. It's very, very different than that. Our investigative mandate is quite specific and broad at the same time. So unlike our alphabet soup federal law enforcement brethren that you can tell what it is they do right in their name, alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, drug enforcement, the FBI has more than 300 violation sets that we're responsible for. So we lose less than half of 1% of agents through means other than retirement. And I think one of the main reasons for that is because a lot of people, particularly people of a certain generation, are known for staying in a job for a certain period of time, getting bored, and then going off and doing something else. Or they feel like they're not getting fulfilled in the position that they're in or the career that they selected, so they go off to do something else. That's not going to happen to you as a special agent, because working crimes against children in LA versus being the recruiter in Philadelphia are like 2 completely different jobs. And as you heard from both Tommy and my background, varied responsibilities that we had, very different experiences. So with those 300 different violation sets that we're responsible for, you could find yourself having multiple careers all within the same organization. So a couple things that I always want to touch upon when I speak to college students in particular, things that can keep you from getting into the FBI. You want to make sure that you pay special attention to our drug policy when you go to the website. But one thing that you're not going to see mentioned is the use of CBD. So even though CBD is a legal product, the FBI has to go by DOJ guidelines, which means that it falls under the same guidance as marijuana usage. So that is 3 years. So you cannot have used marijuana or CBD for at least 3 years prior to the time you apply. Your first opportunity as an undergraduate student to apply to the FBI would be our internship program or our collegiate hiring initiative. That usually opens up in the later part of the summer and closes toward early fall. So this year, I want to say it opened up in early August and maybe closed in late September. It's going to vary a little bit each year, but you want to make sure that you don't do anything that would keep you from being eligible to apply for the position. The other thing I always want to mention is social media usage, because unlike drug use, that there is a clock that runs, that it can run out. Some of the things that people engage in online, that's going to be permanent and will not be disappearing. And you do have to be able to pass an FBI background check for any position in the Bureau. That includes our internship position. So that means a full background check as well as a polygraph examination. So pay special attention when you go to fbijobs.gov to the areas about being disqualified for any position within the Bureau. The other thing that I always want to tell people, especially undergrad, is that the average age of someone reporting to Quantico for new agent training is 31. This is not something that you would be doing shortly upon graduating from college. In my 2 years as a recruiter and applicant coordinator, I have not seen anybody under the age of 27 come out of my field office successfully to report to Quantico for new agent training. So like I said, the average age is 31. So this is not going to be something that you would be stepping into right away, which means that you want to prepare yourself as well as possible. So we have good news and bad news for you. A lot of people think that there's a certain formula that a recruiter can give you, that if you follow that, you can become a special agent. It's not that simple. But I think the better news for you is that instead of a formula of me telling you, well, you need to have this degree and you need to have this profession, instead, we want you to go out and find a job that if the Bureau doesn't happen for you, you would still be happy and satisfied in. There are at least two main reasons for this. One, because I would hate to send you off and have a major and a career that you really have no interest at all in having, and then the FBI doesn't happen, and then you're a miserable human being. The other reason is if you have a job that you don't want to have and you're a miserable human being, you're not going to qualify very well for the special agent position, because we look for particular qualities and traits and characteristics in our best, well, all of our agent applicants and our best applicants to any position within the Bureau. So we refer to these as our core competencies. And you will see if you look at other job qualifications for positions outside of special agent, that there's certain themes that you will see through any posting. And that's even for our internship position. And these traits include things like leadership, good communication skills, somebody that takes initiative, someone who's flexible and adaptable. So with those 300 violation sets that we're responsible for, we don't expect our agents to have subject matter expertise in every one of these areas, but we do need to have people who are flexible, that can adapt to any kind of a situation, and somebody that takes the initiative to learn on their own, as well as to embrace every opportunity that they get to learn what they need to be more effective in their position. So as you're processing for these roles, especially the special agent job, you have to be able to articulate how your life experience has allowed you to develop in these different areas. So you will find this available at fbijobs.gov. It's under core competencies. So for the most part, that's the information that I wanted to make sure that I gave you for any position. I know we focused a little bit more on the special agent role. I'm hoping that you guys have some questions. As I understand it, you're able to put it into the chat feature, and we'll have an opportunity to answer those. And then, like I said, you'll have my contact information. Tommy said you will have his contact information for any follow-up questions. Tommy, was there anything that I missed or that you think is really important to address?
Well, you did a great job, Serena. I think, one thing I like to say when I'm speaking to young people and college students is, don't think that you cannot become an FBI employee. Don't think that you cannot become an FBI special agent. I had been turned down from the job several times, 2 or 3 times in my 20s. It's a difficult job to get to become an FBI agent. As Serena said, our average age of a new agent trainee in Quantico is 31 years old. But I will say that we look for folks that are grinders, that are constantly trying to better themselves in their 20s. You're not going to get hired as a special agent right out of Southern Maine at age 22. You may want to look and see if some of the professional support jobs open are something of interest to you as a starting point. But really, I think the big point Serena made was we really like our recruits to get out in the private sector, get a job, get used to making decisions, dealing with people, exhibiting the core competencies that the FBI promotes, that we look for in our new agents, if that is in fact your goal, to be an agent with the FBI. I think, and really there's no special background or degree that you need to have. You don't have to be a major in criminal justice. You don't have to major in forensic psychology. We hire engineers as new agents. We hire school teachers as new agents. We hire military officers, police officers, all along the line. And I think if you focus on the job, be aware of what the drug policy is, be aware of what the fitness requirements are, be aware of the fact that as a new agent, you got to sign on the dotted line and you could be sent to any field office in the United States. You're not coming back to Portland, Maine, right out of the academy. You're not coming to Boston out of the academy. Very unlikely. I think we've had maybe 2 or 3 new agents come back to Boston in the last 3 or 4 years here in New England. So those are the kind of things you have to come to grips with as you're evaluating, your career path and trying to accomplish your goal of being an FBI agent. But I will say this before we conclude and open it up to questions. I've been dealing with a lot of folks in the last few months who have cubicle syndrome. They're tired of going to the same job every day, the same office, and they want something more out of their career. And I don't think there's many careers out there for you that can compare to being an FBI agent. I look at some of my colleagues, both having worked in the biggest field office in the FBI and then a small office like here in Portland, Maine. And, just the variety of work we get involved in, everything from pharmacy robberies to art theft cases, and organized crime cases, gang cases. We just have such a diverse or broad spectrum of areas we focus on as investigators that you can really enjoy your career with the Bureau and see and do a lot of different things. So I highly recommend that you guys look into the job, and I highly recommend that you don't view it as something that you cannot achieve, because certainly if I could, you could.
Serena and Tommy, thank you so much for that overview. We're getting quite a few questions in the chat, so I just want to turn it over to our students and start to ask some of the questions that they're putting in here. And I think our first one was a little bit about internships, and are there internships available in some of the fields that are not special agents, and what do those look like? For instance, IT and some of the kind of peripheral roles in the FBI.
So in terms of being an intern, you certainly would not be interning as a special agent. Our interns do have opportunities to experience things that you probably would not for any other organization. In Philadelphia, we embed our interns on squads, and they do work side by side with agents, analysts, other professional support. Unlike a lot of private sector corporate internship positions, this isn't just about cheap labor. For us, the internship is an opportunity to introduce the best and the brightest students from around the country to the FBI from the inside out, in the hopes that they would either remain with the FBI following the conclusion of their internship and their graduation at an entry-level professional support position, or that they go out, gain that professional work experience, that subject matter expertise that then they could bring back and apply successfully for a special agent position. Because that is one of the things that I do usually tell students is what I look for in a really great agent applicant. It isn't just development in those core competencies, but it's also, what are you bringing to us that's going to make us a better organization? So the internship program is a great way to get an idea of what the FBI is like, to see if it's going to be a good fit for you for later on. Then go out, gain that subject matter expertise that we need to be effective, and then come back to us down the line. Tommy, anything to add to that?
Yeah, so with the honors internship program, it's a very competitive internship. In Boston, traditionally, we get about 500 applications for college students in our 4-state area of responsibility. Again, Maine, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts. Out of those, we probably select about 40 to 50 for an interview. And out of those 40 to 50 that are interviewed, we only end up taking about 12 to 15 for the job. They get through. And it's one thing I will point out that we do lose a lot of folks that we do on the background investigation for that. You have to be an honors intern, you have to get a top secret clearance. So you have to go through our background policy. So if you've smoked weed in the last 3 years or you use non-prescribed prescription pills, you're going to fail the polygraph. And when you fail an FBI polygraph, it's fatal for life. So if you want to work for the FBI someday, you want to be an agent someday in your late 20s, early 30s, the last thing you want to do is apply for an internship that when you go through the process, you're going to get bounced on the polygraph because that'll preclude you from ever working for us again. But it's a competitive internship. Certainly, it's a gateway into the FBI for a lot of our interns. They graduate from college with a clearance, and they get a job as professional support employees with the FBI. On a path to be a special agent, we do have some interns that are able to slowly ascend up to becoming a special agent. But as Serena and I have mentioned here earlier on the webinar, we really prefer our special agent candidates to come from the private sector.
Thank you. So we're getting a lot of questions about travel, and some of those, is relocation an expectation? Is there international travel a component of this? And just kind of talking about what it looks like to kind of start with the FBI, and is there an expectation to relocate and the like?
Yes, so this is specifically the special agent role, but when you go through the process, you sign a worldwide mobility agreement, a waiver, and that is your acknowledgement that the FBI has the right to send you anywhere at any point in your career, dependent upon needs of the Bureau. So as a parent and as individuals probably that were a child more recently than I was, I'm sure that you heard a lot of times the phrase, because I said so, when you were constantly saying, but why can't I? Why can't I do this? And eventually a parent says, because I said so. That's kind of the FBI's version of because I said so, needs of the Bureau. So needs of the Bureau will always trump all. That includes where you're going to be sent for your first office, what your first assignment is going to be. So they will certainly take your request into consideration, but at the end of the day, needs of the Bureau will be the final determiner. So there are 56 field offices, large field offices, headquarters city offices across the United States, and about 350 satellite offices that we call resident agencies that cover every possible territory. So if you look at a map of where all the field offices are, you see all of these big blank spaces. Those are actually covered by our resident agencies. You could be assigned to any one of those offices directly out of Quantico, and you are agreeing when you sign that worldwide mobility waiver that you could be reassigned at any point in your career. But here's the reality of the situation. Once you're on board, the FBI covers your moving costs. So we cover things like the people coming out and boxing all of your goods up and moving you, and your closing costs on a home sale. It's very expensive, which means that involuntary movement doesn't really happen very often, but you are still agreeing to it. That first office, however, as Tommy mentioned, don't expect to come back home. We have had a number of people come back to Philadelphia since I became involved in recruitment, more than I would have expected. Back in the day, it was a guarantee that you would not come back to your office of origin. Now there is the possibility of it, but we still don't see it that often. And about a third of our new agent trainees at Quantico are getting their number one choice. You get to rank those 56 field offices in order of preference. So about a third are getting their number one choice, and the other 2/3 are averaging in their top 5. So usually if you ask for a region, you can get a region.
Yeah, one of the nice things about it as well is, it's very unlikely in the FBI that you'll be transferred involuntarily. So what I'm saying is, if you get out of Quantico and you get sent to Miami, and you love Miami, you love the way of life, you're there for 5 years, you're starting to build a family, you're not going to get an email or a phone call one day saying you need to report to Chicago next month. You're probably going to be in Miami your whole career. And on the flip side of that, agents are able to move in their career as they progress and get more seniority. And, the majority of agents that I know, the high majority of the agents I know get to where they want to go eventually in their career.
Sorry, and one more thing. I know that you mentioned international travel. We do have legal attachés, referred to as legats, and assistant legal attachés, ALATs, that are assigned to offices all over the world. So a lot of people think that the FBI is only domestic. We need to develop relationships and liaisons with counterparts all around the world, because so many of our cases, the subjects, the money, whatever it is that we're trying to follow and to trace, that's outside of the United States. So we need to have boots on the ground. Typically, our legat will speak the language of the country that they're assigned to. These assignments are highly sought after. They go to senior agents for obvious reasons, because those individuals represent the FBI to that country. But there's a ton of opportunity for travel, both domestically and internationally, as well as international assignments.
Great, thank you. So it looks like we have quite a few students from different STEM fields here, and I'm wondering if you could talk about perhaps some opportunities, not special agent, but maybe in cybersecurity or some of the other kind of peripheral fields that folks could get into, and what that process is like for applying.
So again, you want to start everything at fbijobs.gov. And that will give you an idea of the specific qualifications for each position. So I mentioned 800 different jobs. Each one of those jobs is going to have a different set of qualifications that are required. But in terms of having a STEM background and other opportunities, aside from the special agent role, which we absolutely have a ton of people from a STEM background become special agents, but we also have computer scientists. We have people that work in our laboratories. We are massively expanding a laboratory that we have in Huntsville, Alabama, right now as we speak. So we've always had our really large lab at Quantico. We've always had a laboratory at headquarters in DC, and now we are really expanding the laboratory and the facility that we have in Huntsville, Alabama. So you could have an opportunity to work everything from, or be involved in everything from robotics to software development to somebody that's a biochem major assisting us in our cases. So we desperately need people with STEM backgrounds and that subject matter expertise, both on the professional support side of the house as well as special agent, because a special agent is going out and conducting interviews that will be related to all of these cases. And it is invaluable to have an agent that has that subject matter expertise related to the situation that we're dealing with. So if we're talking about a terrorism incident, if we're talking about something involved with intellectual property rights, if we're talking about something involving counterintelligence and the movement of different chemicals from the United States, elsewhere, having somebody who can conduct those interviews that has that background is invaluable. But there are a ton of opportunities for people with that interest and background outside of the agent role. Tommy, anything?
No, you did a great job with that. I'm fine. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a pretty large veteran population at the University of Southern Maine, and one of the questions was about, does that kind of give you a leg up, or is that more of a challenge in terms of being a special agent or working for the FBI?
Well, the way it gives you a leg up is, without fail, from every person that I have met coming to us from the armed services before coming into the Bureau, they have a particular level of maturity, and they have thoroughly developed in all of those core competency areas, particularly the Marine Corps, the way that they are structuring the training that they're taking everybody through. It's almost verbatim our core competencies when they're talking about things like leadership and initiative. I grew up with a Marine. My dad was a Marine, and flexibility, it was always improvise, adapt, and overcome in our house. There was never an excuse. It was just improvise, adapt, and overcome. And that is so very much the same in the Bureau. So it is a huge leg up. And we've had individuals in Philly that came in as interns and were able to turn right around after the internship and successfully apply as special agents because their military time counted as their professional work experience. Because a lot of people go into the military as enlisted personnel and then use the benefits that they receive to go to college after the military. So no, it's absolutely a huge benefit.
Yeah. And what I would add to that is I too am the son of a Marine. And what I would add to that is, the agent age cap is at age 36. There's an exception to that. It's called veterans preference. If you've served in our military and you have veterans preference, you can become a new special agent quite a bit older. And we actually had a new agent show up to Boston recently that was in his 40s. And in addition to the special agent position, we're always looking for retired military folks for electronic technician positions down in Boston. You could potentially reside in Maine and be able to help with the satellite offices of Boston and still periodically report to Boston for work with certain support roles within the FBI. Linguist positions is something we're always looking for in our Boston field office. Currently, right now, we have a huge need for Arabic speakers. I know that the Portland area is diverse, and there may be some students that are looking to get into the FBI right out of school. So certainly we are very always willing to recruit military folks.
Yeah, when you go to the FBI jobs website, you will see that there's a specific area related to veterans, and there's a lot of resources available on there. And you can be eligible for a veterans preference for a professional support position that would give you a leg up over other applicants.
Great, thank you. So we're getting quite a few questions about maybe limiting factors that students would have in the application process. So one of them was about kind of past mental health issues, and another was about seizure disorders. Are there kind of like limiting factors that would prevent someone from being a special agent or being considered?
So you do undergo a medical examination and review as part of the application process, but we have had a number of people successfully apply that have varied situations and issues that most people would think, okay, well, then that's just going to keep me from being a special agent. Everything from someone who's diabetic to someone that has had major surgery on their knees, on their back. They look at each person individually, and the question that they always ask is, will this keep this individual from fulfilling the role and duties of a special agent? Which means that you can't ever give a blanket answer to that question. Each person has to be looked at individually, and they will say, well, is this going to keep you from being able to fulfill those duties? And if the answer is no, then you move forward. And certainly with any other position. So the special agent role is really the only one. There are a couple of other positions that you do have to go through a medical review, but it's really only special agent that has those physical fitness restrictions. So for people that might not qualify for the special agent position, that doesn't mean that they cannot contribute to the FBI in another role.
Okay. We got an interesting question about potential career ladders at the FBI. And so what does, a special agent, what is the kind of trajectory after someone has served in that role, and maybe also, some of the peripheral roles as well, or how does the kind of career advance through the FBI?
So most special agents remain special agents for their entire career. And then a handful of individuals decide to go into management. So I think the reason that there's only a handful that decide to go into management The reason for that is because it's a completely different job. And most agents just love what they do. And so they just want to keep doing that. But you can absolutely promote within the FBI to be a supervisory special agent, assistant special agent in charge, special agent in charge over an entire field office, assistant director in charge over our 3 largest offices. And then there are all kinds of promotional opportunities that would send you to headquarters, everything from a section chief to a unit chief to an assistant director, you name it. So there are lots of different ways that you can promote within the Bureau. But there are also many different collateral duties that you can have. Things like being a SWAT team member, that is a collateral duty. That's something that you do extra. Becoming a member of our evidence response team, which actually you do not have to be an agent to be on ERT. Our professional support are eligible for that as well. You can become a firearms instructor. You can become a fit advisor. So there are lots of different things that people do that they have an interest in on top of their responsibilities as a special agent. Tommy, anything else?
Yeah. Just one thing I'll say is, one of the nice perks about being an agent is to be able to work investigations where you can really, work with local detectives or big city detectives, work with police departments, and really build a case and put someone away that's been a nuisance to a community for a long period of time. And that's a great benefit of just being a career agent your whole career. Really to cut the legs off of someone that's been a recidivist criminal in a small town or in a big city, and be able to build a lengthy federal case and see them get lengthy prison sentences is very rewarding. And that's what we're looking for in young people. We're looking for those folks that want to be investigators, that want to do the grind and work with police departments and really have a great impact on the communities, where they live. It's the I in FBI is for investigation, and we're looking for investigators.
Thank you so much. And, maybe that leads into a good final question here. And one of our students asked, how does this compare to, what someone might see on TV, and how do they versus the idealized role of what an FBI agent is? What is the reality for someone kind of considering this career path?
I hate TV depictions of an agent. The main reason why is because I think it keeps a lot of people from applying, because they look at the way that we're depicted. And I'll just use me as an example. I am not what most people, if you see me standing out on the soccer field or the baseball field cheering on my kids, you're probably not going to say, oh, well, that's obviously a special agent. And that's the majority of us. Most of us don't fit into that Captain America persona of what that means. So I have yet to see a realistic depiction of being a special agent in a TV show or movies. I think I saw something on the chat, and it always comes up. People want to know about the BAU, thanks to Criminal Minds. So the way that I've only watched about 5 minutes of that show because it drives me crazy. But the way that popular media depict agents, it makes people think you can't have a real life, you can't have a family life. It makes people think that they need to have a particular degree, and that we have all kinds of consultants that come in. So I get people that contact me all the time and say, well, how can I become a forensic psychology consultant for the BAU? And that just doesn't exist. So what I tell people is to focus on becoming a special agent, work hand in hand with your recruiter. And you can find your recruiter, because I think I also saw in the chats that somebody asked if you're not from Tommy's territory, but if you're from another state, when you go to FBIjobs.gov, you'll see a button that says find a recruiter. So click on that button and it will give you your local recruiter out of the field office that you're interested in contacting. Meanwhile, any recruiter would be happy to talk with you. But yeah, popular media depictions is a major issue.
Yeah, and just to add with that, I've actually worked with the behavioral analysis unit about 3 times when I was working in New York. I had cases where I dealt directly with that unit. And as a member of the FBI's Child Abduction Rapid Deployment Team, we deployed to incidents of missing kids throughout the country with 2 or 3 agents who are from the BAU unit. And they're just grinders like the rest of us, really. I mean, they're folks that wanted to be in the FBI. And then once they became special agents, they did their time in the field. And then they put in to get to this collateral unit that is based down in Virginia. I know that they don't fly on a plane and solve crimes in 1 hour. I know that's not how it actually is, but it's just a different collateral duty within the FBI that all agents have the opportunity to apply for.
Yeah, what a very dear friend. She was actually a bridesmaid in my wedding. She's a profiler at BAU, as is her husband. He actually ended up missing our wedding because he was doing a presentation for Interpol on that day. And the reason that they're in those roles, she has worked nothing but crimes against children her entire career. And so she has such subject matter expertise in that area that's why she's there, not because she has some, psychic insight. And I think that the way that it's depicted, again, it does a real disservice to people that, as Tommy said earlier, it makes you think, well, there's no way that I would ever be able to do that, which is absolutely not the case. This isn't a position for everybody, but it's a position for a lot more people than probably realize it would be.
Well, Tommy and Serena, I just want to thank you both so much for taking the time to chat with us this afternoon. For all the students that are attending, we'll post this video on our website and over social media, as well as any materials and some of the links and contact information that's been shared. So you're welcome to check that out. But thank you again so much for taking the time. This was really great and really informative.
Thank you very much.
Good luck. Thanks.
All right. Bye, everyone.